Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, episode 134.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.
Hey everybody, welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards, and today we're talking about something that's more health related, as we often talk about business and practice related topics. Today we're talking about taking care of yourself and specifically the restoration routine. It's a topic that came up on other podcasts that I've been on other videos I've been creating, and really just in my practice on a day in and day out basis. And I thought, you know what, of all the groups of people that would benefit from learning and thinking through their restoration routine. I mean, it's not as if as a healthcare provider you don't know plenty of information about this, but just like the chiropractic productivity system, have you turned it into a very specific routine? So let's talk about that. When it comes to any routine, I think the important component here is that you create a positive routine. So routines in general are not necessarily good or bad. They are, or I should say, they can be good or bad. We have lots of different routines that we carry about in our lives. Hopefully many, many good ones, but as you know, and I have plenty of bad ones too. So a routine is something that is simply a series of actions that are repetitive over and over again, and really in many cases, an automated series of actions. And therein lies both the power of routine and also the difficulty to break a routine, because when you've done something over and over again and there's a cue or an automated trigger to initiate your routine, it gets really difficult to change. So just to tell you a brief story, for those who listen to the podcast, we've talked in the past about sleep, specifically how little I've slept over the last couple of years. I'm not endorsing that by any means, simply saying that there came a point in our businesses where I either had to trade off time with my family or I had to trade off something else. And the decision was made by me that I would trade off sleep. And so I would reduce the hours a day that I was going to sleep in order to maximize the time I had to work on our businesses, so I didn't have to sacrifice time away from my family, that being the highest value. And so I cut my sleep from, maybe 7 hours down to 6 and 5 hours. And I would say on a regular basis, other than the weekend, I sleep from about 11:30 at night, sometimes earlier, till about 3:15, 3:30, 3:45. So somewhere between 4 and 5 hours a night, and then get into practice, have a full day in practice, and as well all the other work that needs to go on in the business. Now, personal choice, don't feel bad for me. This is exactly what I decided to do. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to maximize my sleep, and I wanted to get the most out of it. And so I started to think to myself, how can I do that? How can I get the most out of my sleep? And that's where I came up with this restoration routine. So step one is to create a routine, and really to do it consciously, to think it through, to decide that this is what I'm going to do and this is why I'm going to do it. But that's not enough. And I know you've had struggles before, as have I, where I've written things down and decided, hey, this is what I'm going to do, but it didn't happen. I never actually took the steps, or steps would get missed. The second component to this, to really having a successful routine, is, and maybe the most successful component in this hack, is really about having a trigger or a cue. And think about it, there's certain things you do right now. Maybe golf is an example, where you line up to take your shot and everything's set, and then there's a cue. Maybe it's a little wiggle, maybe your hands move, whatever it is. You get the idea. There's this cue, and that initiates the entire routine. That's what you can set up for yourself as well. It might be the same in practice. I can think of a really simple one. If I'm doing checkups on somebody, look left. That initiates the process for the analysis. And so there's plenty of places where routine comes into play and where you can leverage it to your advantage. So number one is to think it through. Number two is to create a cue or a trigger, something that you can simply just flip and everything just happens A, B, C, D. So when it comes to the restoration routine, we'll talk about my specific one and what I would advise you to test out for yourself and to play around with. The next one is just go ahead and follow through and complete the routine. and then the reward. And the reward could be, many different things. It could be an actual emotional reward from completing a routine, something you just feel good about and completing on a regular basis. It could be more organized, where you're tracking it day in and day out. It could be a checklist system. It could be an app where you're able to track your habits and consistency of habits, at least until it becomes a very automated routine, one where you probably wouldn't forget the steps as you go. So for the restoration routine, it's broken down for me into 3 major components. 1 is a body preparation, 2 is making sure I've got the nutrient base, and then 3 is sleep environment. So if I'm going to sleep for a very low amount of time, I want to maximize that. And I would even say that sleeping for 4 and 5 and 6 hours in a very dedicated, well-transitioned sleep cycle, getting lots of concentrated sleep and then waking up without little, up and down and waking up and having 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 hours, I'd much rather have that concentrated version. I'm more rested and I'm more productive. And so what's body preparation? Well, body preparation for me really comes down to a series of steps from hydration. So I'll have a couple big glasses of water with some salt and lime. We'll talk about salt in a second. And then the next step for me is exfoliation. And I'll use a dry brush and I'll dry brush my skin. And then I'll go in, we'll do a sauna. And then once the sauna's done, step before that, I'll do a hot shower. Then I'll do a sauna. And then I'll do a cold shower. So you've probably read or listened to more about, cold and the use of cold as an adaptogen for your body, something that stimulates positive adaptation, even though it's a stressful event. Probably a whole podcast in and of itself. And then I'll go ahead into my nutrient base. So once that's all finished, moisturization, I should say. So I use coconut oil as again, just trying to put things on my skin that you could probably also eat and avoid things that maybe I couldn't. And then I'll go into my nutrient preparation. So my bedtime routine is simply collagen or some bone broth, and then magnesium, vitamin C, and some sea salt, or half a teaspoon of sea salt. Salt being one of those myths that a lot of people are afraid of. You don't need to be afraid of it. Done a few podcasts in the past. You can look those up, called The Salt Myth, and I talk more about that. And unless you have a chronic kidney or acute kidney disease, there's probably a good chance that you're salt deficient, and avoiding salt is actually not helping you. The last component is the room preparation. So making sure the room's cold, ambient temperatures, I think 60 to 68 degrees statistically allow for better melatonin release. Within that, making sure that your devices are not there. Of course, I'm a realist, so my phone is beside me. I wear blackout goggles or a blackout mask, and there's lots of different versions that you can find online, but that's been a game changer. I was actually shocked at how beneficial that was. And then, breathing through your nose as opposed to breathing through your mouth. And this might be kind of an odd conversation, especially if you haven't heard of this before, but the last 6 months I've been using mouth taping. So taping my mouth shut and using nasal expanders and putting those inside the nasal cavity to expand the breathing centers, and with the taping of the mouth to force my body to breathe through the nose to maximize oxygenation. You wake up with less of a dry throat, less of a cough, and you just feel more energized. And so, those are the steps of my restoration routine. And I wanted to share those with you today because I really felt like there would be great benefit for you, one, just to think about your routines in general. What routines do you have in your life that are conscious, that you've planned out, versus which routines do you have in your life that are just automated and you're not happy with? And an example, look at the things in your life where you're struggling with. There's a really good chance you have a routine there and it's so automated that you're not even aware that you're following those steps. And so there's some work to be done by paying attention. The second component is simply maximizing the time that you do sleep, getting the most out of your sleep. And it's not just the most time, but the most quality out of your sleep. And I think a lot of people, when they think of sleep, number one, they go right into, I need to sleep longer. That's not necessarily the case. Now, it might be, but take whatever amount you're sleeping now and increase the efficiency of that sleep 10%, 15, 20, 30, 40%. You're going to get so much more out of that in terms of rest and restoration and productivity when you are awake, compared to if you only think about the amount of time that you're sleeping and not the quality and depth of the sleep that you have. So guys, that was a great episode. Please try some of these things out for yourself. And as always, Thank you for listening to Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic.